So a mother came to Temple Religious School one Sunday to read Torah stories to the first grade. She read these words from Tatum's book of Genesis to the children. And the man named Lot was warned to take his wife and flee out of the city, but his wife looked back and was turned into salt. One child in the back of the room raised her hand and asked, "What happened to the flea?" Writing letters to God has always been a way of helping our children discover the wonder and mystery of life. And in reading the questions I will answer for the fourth grade kids tomorrow morning at Sunday school, it occurred to me that while the kids are directing their questions to whoever created us, most of the time I think God is also speaking to our kids and through them to adults, to us. Like one child wrote, "Dear God, did you really mean for the giraffe to look like that? Or was it just an accident?" When I read that, I wondered, what do we mean by accident? Is there any such thing as an accident? Or just some things we can explain and others we can't? Maybe the biggest accident of all is our being alive and assuming that certain parts of a divine plan are accidents because we simply don't understand them. Then again, it may be a different version of what we call in baseball the hit and run. We're often so busy being on the run in our work life that we never see the truth that just hit us between the eyes. Our problem may not be that we don't understand. Maybe at times we just don't notice. Amazing moments like this morning, then, and other events and incidents we don't expect to see or deal with, then, are not necessarily accidents. Another child wrote in a class on the land of the Bible, "Dear God, who draws the lines around the countries?" I love that question. I often wonder why so many of us stay within lines that others draw around us, not just with regard to countries, but with races, religions, neighborhoods, even families. Shouldn't we feel disappointed in ourselves when we retreat to our own old borders that keep us separated from others not like us? Not because we might be trespassing, but because we fear to go beyond where we've been and where it's familiar and with the people with whom we are comfortable. Most of the time, we create our own borders, don't we? We draw our own lines in the sand. We're all shaken by the mass shooting in San Bernardino, but the Facebook posts about Muslims from Memphians this week, including Jews who don't bother to know the Muslim doctors at our hospitals who treat them, or the teachers who teach our kids from Syria, the restaurant owners on Kirby, and the friends we as a temple celebrated Thanksgiving with last week. I know not many of you were here, but we were with them. People who create their own boundaries that perpetuate hatred and bigotry, betray the essence of Judaism, which is the spreading of goodness, not evil. And that is why Rabbi Bowman and I will be representing Temple on the front lines at 3rd and Adams, not for this morning's marathon, but on Thursday, for the more than 26.2 years it has taken white Southerners, Christians and Jews, yes, even children of the Confederacy, to say, you know, when the historic marker at 3rd and Adams in front of Confederate war hero Nathan Bedford Forrest's early home in downtown Memphis notes that, quote, Forrest's business enterprises made him wealthy. Why not say the truth? What made him wealthy was selling people, and owning slaves. That's how he became wealthy. For no other reason than moving beyond the self-made boundaries we adults unwittingly perpetuate. For as Judaism teaches truth, not politics, not our social groups, not our comfort zones, not our one religion, truth really can put the past to rest. Truth can put the present in perspective. And truth can answer that kid's question about why we draw our own lines. I have 10 more letters to God from children, but I'll just share one more. In framing this week's Torah portion, Vayeshev, from which Tatum will be chanting the opening verses, one of the most thoughtful letters I ever read was this one, which began, "Dear God, what does it mean when the Torah says you are a jealous God? I thought you had everything." Well, a well-known illustrator of children's books, Maurice Sendak, once wrote, and I quote, "There must be more to life than having everything." Indeed, there must be, and indeed there is. Most of us eventually discover, that our personal fulfillment is not an accumulation of Hanukkah presents or material wealth. We discover that our personal fulfillment is an accumulation of priceless blessings like the love of family and friends, good health and good companions, patience, perseverance, courage, faith in oneself, especially teenagers who sometimes look outside rather than inside themselves. Very often, the more things people possess, the more confused and complicated their lives can be. The whole notion of a jealous God underscores the futility of materialism, narcissism, and self-centeredness. How indeed could God be jealous of anything if this world could not even exist without God? So perhaps what the Torah means by a jealous God is this, friends, that God possesses everything except one thing: the free will of you and me, of every human being, on how we choose to live and be and do. Perhaps what God envies is what only Tatum and each of us can give: our love and commitment. Contentment of spirit, then, is simply wanting what God wants. Ignoring that is what makes God jealous. Tatum's about to receive the Torah and take us on the journey of a spoiled brat, a teenager named Joseph. Stay tuned for Tatum's take on how it all begins. My job is to frame the total picture that she's going to fill in. Most of you know how it ends from the Broadway show, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Phyllis may have starred in it for all I know. So I'm not spoiling the Tatum story that she is starting in Genesis 37 to share the ending that we will read 2 Shabbats from now on December 19th in Genesis, in the portion known as Vayigash, when the spoiled teenager, the spoiled brat, Joseph, grows up. And after all the hurt, all the games, all the material wealth, all the jealousy, he learns, listen closely, he learns how a Jew claps with one hand. Do you know how a Jew claps with one hand? Oh, yeah. Joseph, who she's going to introduce to us, learns in 2 weeks when he's an old man. So that's the purpose of my life: to be there for others, to be there for my family, and not just my family, to realize that the questions I had as a little child, who made the boundaries, why does the giraffe look like that, they may not all be answered when I'm an older person. But when I get outside myself and realize that I'm part of a larger family, for Jews, the Jewish faith, family, and heritage, when I realize, as we hope Tatum will, that Judaism teaches that you never have to stop growing and that you can be a bat mitzvah, a daughter of mitzvah, not just when you're 13, but when you're 53 and 83, when we open ourselves to wonder, awe, humility, gratitude, when we surrender by simply being in this moment right now instead of being on our phones somewhere else. If we can do that, we begin to understand what it means to bring God closer to us and ourselves closer to God. So those little children's questions for God are really for adults. It's how we draw closer to God, each other, no matter what our age or stage in life.